Hello, and welcome to the Guilbault Girls Show, where you will have the opportunity to hear from mothers, fathers, siblings, and individuals themselves about their journey of living with a disability. I know, it's called Guilbault Girls, but we have a bonus for you as we get the Guilbault boys to interview some of the dads and siblings and get their perspectives too. We'll also have special guests from time to time to share the many resources that are available to those living with a disability and their families. So get ready to laugh, smile, cry, maybe even get a little angry when you hear some of these stories of their day-to-day struggles. But let's not forget their many triumphs. As they say, it takes a village. And if it weren't for our village, we wouldn't be where we are today. So join us. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Guilbault Girls Show. I'm your host, Karen Guilbault, and today's guest is Kendra. I don't even want to butcher it. Can you say it?
Gottsleben.
Okay, good. All right. So Kendra is the marketing communication specialist at the Center for Disabilities at the University of South Dakota, Sanford School of Medicine, and Sioux Falls, South Dakota. She's an author and spokesperson on living a life with a rare disease and disability. Kendra is the founder and executive director of the nonprofit organization Rare by Design. She is an Augustana University graduate with a double major in sociology and psychology. Her career blends the two worlds in which she grew up, which was medicine and education. Kendra's memberships on numerous boards, advisory groups, and professional societies keeps her activity engaged locally, statewide, and nationally. She has defined her life by a positive outlook and success in overcoming obstacles. Kendra refuses to be defined by MPS. Can you pronounce?
The broad term is Mucopolysaccharidosis.
Okay, so and MPS for short. Okay,
Yep.
So the rare genetic condition she's had since birth. Kendra enjoys a stylish outfit and shoes to match as she strives to make a difference. One of her favorite colors is yellow, which embodies her life motto. When life hands you lemons, make the best lemonade possible. Love that. So we got to meet Kendra back in 2016 at the first ever Runway of Dreams fashion show, kicking off the Tommy Hilfiger first ever adaptive line. It was a long day, but it was amazing. And we actually got to spend a lot of time with you and got to know you very well, along with some of the other models. So it was a great day. And then we got to see her again at two other shows. And we've just always kept in touch. So I really wanted to have her on the show. So welcome, Kendra. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. You've been doing really good with all of your podcasts. They're always been so fun to listen to and watch.
Well, thank you. And then just another little fact too. So I used to work for the ARC Northern Chesapeake region, and one of my coworkers was sitting here talking, and she was talking about a friend that was in the fashion show. And lo and behold, it was Kendra. And I think that is just so crazy that Leslie and you worked together. And then Leslie came here and worked at the ARC. And now she's, at the state at DDA. And I'm actually going to be interviewing her as well.
Yeah, it's a small world when you think about that.
Really?
Because we're in South Dakota, and Leslie's from South Dakota, and she was working with me and then got the job out there. So, it's kind of, it's fun to see how those connections happen too, though.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you think South Dakota, Maryland, like there's a difference there, but it's cool.
Yeah. So let's dive in. Can you share with us in more detail about what MPS is and how it affects you? And just say it one more time too.
So the broad term is mucopolysaccharidosis, and so. And then the MPS 6, it's called Martolome. So there's several different types within the MPS family.
Okay.
So type 6. And so how we describe MPS is I am missing the enzyme that is needed to go in and cleanse my cells. So without that enzyme, my cells build up with a gluey-like substance. So when you break down mucopolysaccharide, muco is that buildup, it's that mucus type stuff. sugar, saccharide, many, poly. So for me, it affects heart, eyes, connective tissue, uh, other vital organs. But for some others, it can affect those too. But for like MPS 4, they're more flexible. So, mine constrict my muscles, connective tissue.
Okay.
So each kind of condition overly affects all of our connected or all of our organs and everything, but there are some little differences in each type.
Okay. And can you share with us what it was like growing up? And I know this is like a biggie here, it covers a lot, but because you've had many, from your surgeries, then, to your friendships, school life, and then even some of your hobbies growing up.
Yeah, so I've been really lucky and blessed that for someone who's rare, so MPS is a rare condition, so we're in the rare space, but we're also in the disability space, that I've only had maybe 20, 21 surgeries. And, for people with disabilities or with rare diseases, that's not a very big number, because I guess in my opinion, I don't think that is a ton. But so as a kid, I'm 3 feet tall right now. So I've always been short, and that is due to MPS. Not everyone that has MPS type 6 is a small, but there is a good majority that are. But I was very lucky too as a kid with friendships. I grew up, live in Sioux Falls, like you mentioned today, but I grew up in a smaller town called Vermillion, South Dakota. And so it was a small town, but the community, was just amazing. It was a university town too. So it had that college aspect of it. And so when I was in grade school from kindergarten, preschool to 5th grade, I lived with about 20 kids. So they grew up with me because I went to the private school. I wasn't going to the public school.
Okay.
So we kind of grew up together. And I think they knew I was different to a certain degree because I was shorter. But, when we were that little, I wasn't like substantially shorter. They kind of hit when 4th grade and everybody came back from 5th grade. Everybody kind of shot up and I just kind of stayed there. But then when we left the private school and we entered the middle school, it was nerve-wracking because I was meeting, so many more students. I didn't know how they would react. I mean, I knew I was different, but not probably to the extent.
Were you very social and outgoing, or were you more quiet and introverted?
With people that I know and people that I'm really good friends with, I'm outgoing. But I would say I'm a extrovert introvert.
I get it. I hear you.
I'm not one of those people that just goes up and is like, "Hi, my name's Kendra. What's your name?"
Right.
So that was nerve-wracking. And the middle school was a lot bigger. And so trying to figure out how I was going to get around, because I didn't use a wheelchair in elementary. I mean, walking was hard, but I was very much kind of able to get around because it wasn't super
Right, the
long.
classes were probably closer together. You didn't switch around as much. Yeah.
The majority of it, like you were in one class, but if you went to PE, you went to the gym, lunch.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a lot of like walking. But then, when you go to middle school, every class is at a different place. So the school provided, and I always call it like a chair out of the 70s. It was like burnt orange, and it was
Uh-huh.
basically a chair on wheels. I would not say it's a wheel chair. I really wish I would have taken a picture of it because, like, you know, I think people would be like, really? That is an
Yeah, to see how far things have come too. Just yeah.
yeah, and so it wasn't powered. I had to be pushed. But looking back, I feel like that was also a blessing in disguise because I didn't have all the friends that I had in my, elementary in each class.
Mhm.
So I had to, kind of find people that could push me to the next class. And
Class.
so in doing so, I kind of met new people
Mhm.
and I kind of became friends with them. So it was kind of an avenue for meeting others and
Yeah.
getting to know them. And so middle school, I get dropped off to school by my parents, and since the chair wasn't powered, I just kind of would sit right by my first period class and just sit there and wait because it was like I couldn't really walk around that much and I wasn't gonna nap. One of my friends would be like, "Hey, push me to wherever you're going." I've also I've also been a person that I don't pity myself, but I'm also realistic
Right.
in the aspect of um, I'm I was the same age as many of them, but I think when you've had surgeries and you've had doctor visits all the time, you grow up a little faster.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I was realistic in the aspect of my friends are not going to come over all the time, sit with me until school starts, push me around. I didn't expect
Like
that
that.
because
Mhm.
that was just unrealistic. Not that they didn't at times, but I just knew it was not going to be an everyday.
Thing, right. And faith goes through that too. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I could totally get it.
and there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think that means your friends, you're not as good of friends as you are. But I think you also have to realize that their journey is different than ours.
Mhm.
So you can't expect something that they wouldn't possibly uh, know. You
Yeah.
know, it, it's not a dig towards you.
Right. Exactly.
So then when I left middle school, we finally realized, okay, we probably need a wheelchair. So as a freshman is the first time I got a legit wheelchair. And that was challenging mentally because my mom and I very much thought okay, if we're caving in and saying we need a wheelchair, that it means I'm never gonna walk again. Which was the stupidest thinking now
But
that
we
we
all do it because I did the same thing with Faith, pushed off that wheelchair for so long. And I'm like, well, realistically, she needs it for these longer distances. It doesn't mean she can't. So no, I hear you, I get you, I feel you. So yes.
because once I got that wheelchair, I got so much more independence.
Mm-hmm.
And
And then there's also that fine line of you don't want to become too independent of it because you still want to get up and do those things. Otherwise, you're going to get muscle atrophy and then you're
yeah,
going to stay in there. So there are some people that once they go in, they don't get back out, but it's because then they're relying on it too much. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to say that too.
no, it is. And
Yeah.
that is, I think that's, you don't realize that. But then when I did that, I was like, because mom and I would go shopping or we would do stuff. And before we would use um strollers. I would
Mm-hmm.
use strollers, and those were always we tried to find the one that looked less baby like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then my mom would walk off and forget to push me over
Kendra,
there.
I love
So
Mom.
but then with the wheelchair it was like, hey, I'm gonna go look at this. and I'll come back while you're looking at this. So it was things like that that we never
Mhm.
really
Yeah, gave you more
had
independence.
thought about. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I was nervous about coming to school with it, but again, it was a hit. Everybody was like, because there's kind of that like back end of it. There were some guys who were like, "Hey, can I jump on it?" And you grab it. I'm like, "Well, there was a really short kid in my class." I'm like, "You can," but the rest, like, you're too tall. But it was also another way to um have conversations.
Conversations and connect, yeah.
But I was, it was scary too, just because I was the only person in Vermilion High School at the time that used a wheelchair.
Wheelchair. Mhm.
You know, but I was very lucky. I've been often asked, like, were you made fun of? Were you bullied?
Mhm.
And again, I'm realistic, and I say, I'm not saying that I wasn't behind my back,
Back. Mhm.
but to my face, no.
No.
I mean, there might have been some odd comments that I'm like, what are you saying? But
Mhm.
I never really took it as a bully remark. I took it as that's a stupid comment.
Right. Mhm.
And
They don't know. You don't know what you don't know too. Yeah.
yeah, and people say things. That's just
And
the
kids are
way.
kids, and it's
Yeah,
sad but true.
yeah. So I mean, I was very lucky, with my growing up years. For the most part, I don't have a lot of um, ideas of or remembering people saying mean things. There were instances during school where I did have um, not a ton, but like in Vermilion School, that teachers or guidance counselors kind of questioning my ability because
Mhm.
I was mainstream. I was on a 504.
Mhm.
So I was with everybody
Everybody
else.
else.
And so I took an AP class, and what that one teacher for the literature part, she had never had someone with a disability in her class, and she was just didn't really know how to um, work with me, or it was just you could just tell she was kind of like awkward or whatever,
Yeah.
and I just
Not in a
realized she doesn't know.
right. 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 Yeah. And there's also too, like even with Faith, when she was going to regular school, there were sometimes where they didn't know how to teach her the proper way that she learned, and didn't quite get it. But at the Maryland School for the Blind, because she has the cortical vision impairment, they are trained and they know how to navigate that.
Yeah.
I know it's different than yours, but it's in that
Oh,
kind of same majority of, like,
yeah.
some of them, they know like, I don't, yeah, they're better
Well,
equipped.
part of it is I think there's still that very common misconception of if you have a disability, they tend to always be in the resource room,
Right. Mhm.
or they're not in the mainstream
Mainstream.
classes. And
Mhm.
so my mom, she's retired from education, but she was a 504 coordinator, IEPs, and she was a principal administrator, so she had that background. And
Yes.
so she went into the teacher and was just saying, like, she only needs accommodations. She doesn't need modifications. Just ask her. Like,
Mhm.
and I've always been an open book because I realized not only am I, now in the wheelchair, but like not only am I in a wheelchair, but I'm little. And
Mhm.
so I feel like sometimes that throws people even more, because if you were a taller person in a wheelchair, not straight across the board, I'm saying in society, but
Right.
there is that, like, okay, wait, is she 5 in a wheelchair? Or, you know. And
Mhm.
so I'm aware of that, and so I just, if something happens, I don't get distraught or thrown off track.
Right, because of it, right.
Yeah.
And what kind of hobbies did you do? What did you do for fun?
So I liked painting. I liked being with my friends, but I wrote a lot. So when I was in 5th grade, we had a really good teacher that taught us, all the rules of, before everybody had computers, the
Mhm.
handwriting of like how to edit, draft 1, and then you go through again and do draft 2.
Mm.
We edited like our classmates. And so that's really kind of when writing became an outlet for me. And I wrote a lot of poetry, not rhyming poetry. I'm not that good at that. That's hard. Rhyming is hard. But, that kind of, with surgeries and things like that, we lost a classmate when we were in 6th grade. She went to the private school with us in that class. So then when we moved to the public school, she um, ended up passing away from leukemia. And so, that was tough. But I wrote some poems, about her. She believed in angels and loved teddy bears. And so those were some of the things that I wrote about, so even at a young age,
Mhm.
besides my issues, losing a classmate was challenging for our class.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When you've felt down and frustrated, that brings us to, I mean, you had that writing outlet, but was there anything else that you could do in the moment that kind of helped you get through?
I was very lucky um that my mom was a person that she didn't hide stuff from me, but she also um talked about, was comfortable talking about some of the tough issues. So
Mhm.
like surgery has always been very scary because with our condition, the intubation process is almost more challenging than some of the tough surgeries we've had. When we were trying to figure out some issues about from 6th to 7th grade, I was losing a lot of energy. I was losing a lot of, I couldn't really write anymore. It was just, I was slowly going downhill. And
Mhm.
so one of the surgeries, someone had told us about a man named Dr. Kopitz, who was at St. Joseph's in Maryland. So we flew out there for him to look at me, but he worked more specifically on little people.
Okay.
And I am little, but I don't have the anatomy of what little people have. And
Okay.
we really were trying to help him understand that. But he said, "Oh no, she's good." But we went in to try to get my adenoids and tonsils out before having this other serious surgery, and it coded twice. So um, when we stressed with him that the intubation is extremely hard because we kind of have little nooks and crannies in
Okay.
our airway, and so that surgery didn't work out. I still have my adenoids and I still have my tonsils, but I'm here.
You're alive.
They said, when they came out to my parents, they said, "She's alive. We don't know how she is, but she is." And my mom just said it wasn't her time to go,
Yep.
you
Yeah,
know.
dog.
But then I
I'm a
woke up and I was annoyed because I still had a
had
sore
them.
throat and I still had my adenoids and tonsils.
Well, you say it's not a lot, but 21 surgeries is a lot. And what was your longest surgery?
So my longest one was 3 years ago. during COVID pandemic
Yes, I
2020.
remember.
I had open heart surgery, and that was a 9-hour surgery. And that surgery,
It was a long recovery too.
yeah, and that surgery is at this point in my life. Not saying there aren't going to be more surgeries, but at this point in my life, that was the hardest surgery I've ever been through. Because of recovery, but also the reality of the intubation. I'm older, a lot of some of these surgeries were when I was younger, and so it was mentally hard, physically hard, and I would say it was
Emotionally.
physically and mentally hard for my mom, my parents too,
Mhm.
because we knew I had to do it, but the reality is, and I don't like to be morbid, but
Mhm.
the reality is now that I'm, older, when I was a little kid, I just always thought, not that my parents didn't care, but I was like, I didn't understand the gravity
Yeah, of it.
of it. But as an adult, it becomes more because when I'm getting rolled away from my parents, I'm thinking how scared I am,
Yeah.
but I'm realizing how scared they are because they're thinking, is this the last time I'm going to see her alive?
Mm-hmm. That chokes me up. Yeah. Yeah. It's scary.
Yeah, because with this surgery too, I knew it was going to be a long process.
Mm-hmm.
The airway is a tough thing for me, and my heart was pretty bad, so it was like, and then there was talk of maybe needing a trach, and then that was hard because I felt like if I have a trach, then I lose more independence. It was just a big, and then it was COVID
Yeah.
on top of that.
Yeah. Which is even 10 times scarier.
Yeah. So it was August, which we're coming up 3 years. August 13th was when I had surgery. So it was like you had all of that anxiety, but then you had, the COVID precautions where people couldn't come,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah. And then
luckily,
you're alone
yeah,
because you're over 18. So you can't have anybody. Because weren't they just like letting, if you were under 18, you could have somebody?
that was, but we got it. And we got it so that both my parents could be in there when I was in the hospital when I was having surgery.
Okay.
And then because I have surgery in the kids hospital because I'm so complicated.
That's right.
Yeah. And so they did allow my mom to stay with me because I was in the hospital in the ICU for 8 days. And then I moved up to the regular floor for 8 days. So I was there a long time. So,
Mm-hmm.
we had not like I had gotten all the boxes checked before surgery and everything with the team and everything. But then once we showed up, the message didn't get to the people. So we had to do a little bit of, my mom had to get a little upset.
That us
And,
moms, leave it to the moms. When
and
it comes to our kids.
yeah, and what was hard for me too is I'm an advocate for myself. I'm very
Mhm.
much like that's my
Huge.
role. But when that went down right before they were gonna roll me into surgery, I started crying because I'm like, I had all of this stuff checked. I double checked, I triple checked. And at that point I was like, I don't have the energy to like get this going. I'm just trying to keep myself not
Calm and
crazy
collective and yeah.
going into surgery.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I knew my mom would take, but it was also frustrating because I had all of that stuff
Mm-hmm.
figured out, like checked, rechecked. But
Yeah.
that's just part of the world of hospitals
This
and
is true.
doctors.
This is
And
true.
so, yeah.
So how was your college experience as far as like, was it inclusive, the accessibility of getting around, that kind of stuff?
So there are two colleges here in Sioux Falls. That's why I moved to Sioux Falls to go to college. Uh, and they're both private. But the reason, so they both have very good reputations academically.
Definitely.
But when I toured them, luckily we toured them during winter. So we got like the full effect of like accessibility wise and
Mhm,
snow removal and everything.
mhm.
And what really sold me for Augustana was every building on campus to get into the building had at least one push button.
Okay.
And then every building also had one set of bathroom doors that had push buttons.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so this was 2004 or 5, like I graduated in
Yeah, which is kind of
2004.
surprising back
So
then,
it was
right?
very surprising back then because then the outside doors, that still was kind of like, oh, okay. But the buttons on the bathrooms was,
Stalls, yeah.
and so because of independence and stuff, I didn't live on campus.
Okay.
So I knew also I was going to be on campus a lot. And so
Mhm.
that was kind of key for me too, with all those um, sidewalks that were really good, uh, parking lots, and all of that with the buttons. It was like I wouldn't be struggling getting doors open and
Mhm.
stuff. I hate saying it's a very good school for academia, but yes, I kind of like, well, you have some good buttons. I really like.
But it's instrumental so you
Yeah,
can get to those good academics. They need that.
yeah, yeah. And so again, I ran into overall had a great experience. But again, I ran into some professors that didn't probably hadn't had many people 3 foot in a wheelchair taking their classes. And so I ran into that freshman year. And so what I realized was from that point on, I emailed every professor before the next semester or whatever. And I said, hi, I'm Kendra Gottsleben. I'm 3 feet tall. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm going to be in your class. I'm an open book. Ask me any questions.
And that's how they learn.
Yeah. And that was my way of
So that's good.
trying to say, like, seriously, ask me questions. I'm okay. And so every room that I had a class, I had a table on wheels, because of my wheelchair. Um, Overall, I had really good professors. I learned a lot. We wrote a lot too there, which was great. It's a every class, like even in math class, we wrote. In science class, we wrote. So when I was ending my college career, someone had asked if I ever thought about writing a book, and I said, "Yeah, someday." But I'm like, I'm still kind of young. And somebody had said, "No, I think you have a lot. No, you have enough content to write something." And so this friend of mine sent me an outline and was like, "Here, here, here." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So what was nice is a lot of those papers. It's a liberal arts school, so a lot of some of the things that we wrote on were reflective of we read something and how does that reflect your life or your experience or that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
so some of those assignments were where I started and just expounded on
Mhm.
for my book.
Book.
Yeah.
That's
So it really
awesome.
came in handy.
So that goes us into the next thing. So you've written 3 books so far. Can you share a little bit about each one? And do you have any more in the works?
My first book is Live, Laugh, Lemonade, A Journey of Choosing to Beat the Odds. And so that was kind of taking what I had said, those papers, and putting it into the book as a reflective piece. So if somebody were to ask, like, what is it? And it's kind of an inspirational, it's kind of a autobiography, but a lot of it starts from when I was a kid, about when I was born, and helping to talk about the journey to where I was at that point when I graduated and finished the book.
Mhm.
Because at first I was just going to write about like how I thought of things as a person with a disability, with a rare disease. What were my perspectives on situations and stuff? And I realized that when I talked about that, you needed to understand where I came from
Came
as a
from.
kid to have those ideas or that perspective at the age that I was at,
Yes, that makes
you
a
know.
lot of sense.
So I needed to kind of explain that. And so I added some poems that I had written when I was in grade school, some that I'd written in college, because I took creative writing at Augie, and that was a good class. That was a good challenge for me because they were doing the real, when
Mhm.
you're writing, not just like just whatever you want to put on this,
Right.
the rules and stuff.
Stuff, yeah. And then what
And
was your
then
second book?
that second book was called Kendra's Lemonade, and it was a kid's book. And so that was my way of taking the first book and trying to make it simple, much simpler, for kids to
Yes.
understand how, we're all unique. And that's okay. Where I talked about the kids in, like, some of the kids in the images are like people from my class. We don't put names in there, but one of them is an example of one of the pages talks about how I was really short and I had a classmate that was really tall, which was true. He was very tall. And I just talk about how that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being different, and it's also a teaching book in that aspect of parents could read it to their child, counselors could read it to their students, because what I did was, at not on all of the pages, but on some of the pages, we asked a question where, like, what's unique about you? So it kind of became a discussion.
Conversation and discussion book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you could realize somebody might say, because you know how people wear glasses, that's technically an assistive device, but nobody thinks of it that way.
That way.
So, like, if a child in the classroom says, I wear glasses, you know what I mean? It's just that conversation of everybody has something unique about them in a classroom, in society, and that's what makes society great.
Yeah.
So then after that, so that was 2014, I self-published that one. And then in 2019,
That's one
I
I have.
worked with a publisher and wrote Kendra's Perfect Dance.
Yep, that's the one I have.
Yeah. And so this one is more of a, not really a teacher, like we didn't ask questions in it, but it's talking about, how we have struggles. And like I danced when I was a kid from fourth and third grade. And so that is, of course, Kendra is the character of me, where I talked about how I had a stool because sometimes I needed to rest. So I had a stool in that class. And I talked about how it's hard to stretch my arms really tall because of, I didn't use as big as words, but like because of my constricted arms and stuff. And sometimes I got tired and sometimes I got frustrated if I wasn't doing the moves
Move the right way.
like everybody else in my class. And I kind of felt sad. And then we moved forward and showing that you need to dance your own special way, and that's okay because everybody has their own way of doing whatever they love to do or whatever they're trying to do in general.
Yep.
And of course, there is a lemon theme in many of the books. So there's that because I live by the life or the quote of, when life hands you lemons, make the best lemonade possible. And I put that special twist on it because possible means like making the best lemonade is great, but as good as you can.
Mhm.
Everybody has their way of making it as possible for them.
Mhm. Yeah.
For future books, I would like to write future books, but I just need to find time.
Time to do it. Yeah, you are busy, which is going to lead us into a little bit of a few more things. I want to get your first two books. Okay. So, which brings us into your nonprofit called Rare by Design. So, if you can share with us what ultimately led and or inspired you to start that.
So, what inspired me to start Rare by Design was because I had attended the Runway of Dreams first event and I was part of it. The excitement and the energy that the room had, as a model, but then just watching so many people who have never experienced being a model who had a disability,
Yep.
but also the people in the audience. It was very hard to explain the energy. It was just like electrifying. It was nerve-wracking, but it was amazing. And I just felt like someday I wanted to try to figure out a way to do something like this back in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And so that was 2016. So, there was many years later, but I kept it in the back of my mind. And clothing has always been a passion of mine, but also seeing visual representation, seeing people on the boardrooms or in the boardrooms, on commercials, like just seeing us as we are. And that's kind of where the books came from too, the kids' books. Because when I was a kid, I didn't see a lot of characters that were like shorter or had a disability or had a rare disease. And so that's kind of the same thing with Rare by Design. Is our mission is to celebrate the rare that makes us unique and extraordinary. And so it'd been a long time dream, but I was just like, I don't know. And so my grandma passed away February of 2020. And I had told her about this dream of wanting to do some type of event in Sioux Falls where we have local boutiques lend us clothes and we have models of all types of people so that we could show what true diversity looks like. So we have people with disabilities, people without disabilities, people with different backgrounds, all of it. And because also is people don't realize when you say the word diversity, people with disabilities are not often part of that conversation.
Yeah.
And so when I told my grandma that, she had said, I know that you'll do it someday because you're you. I was like, well, we'll see. So my grandma had passed away in February of 2020, not too long after she had said that. She was battling some heart issues too. And so then when I had my heart surgery and didn't know wasn't guaranteed the outcome that it would be after surgery and waking up, would I wake up, would I not? Not like immediately after, but maybe a couple of days after, I was like, I need to stop thinking about this and I need to put it into action. And so that's basically how it started. I let myself heal.
First and foremost.
And then I tried to kind of started networking and asking people like, have you ever done this? How do you do this? This is what I want to do, blah, blah, blah. And one of my board members had her, before I had created my board, she also went to Augie and she had cystic fibrosis and she had started a nonprofit. And she had said, oh, yeah, I mean, I'll try to help you as much as I can. And she connected me to a really awesome lawyer in town, and their firm donated the pre-work, like to create the
Mhm.
501c, and it kind of stems from there. So that was in 2021. We were official
Mhm.
March 31st, 2021.
That's
And then
awesome.
kind of everything else is, been history. Part of it too is, you live on the East Coast, so you see more of it, but it's also on the West Coast. So you do see those ads, or you see also because of Mindy's really amazing push with Runway of Dreams and stuff, but you kind of see those things. They start out in, the East Coast and the West Coast, but the Midwest, sometimes it takes longer to get here.
Mhm.
And so I really wanted Rare by Design to help facilitate,
Hate that.
yeah,
Mhm.
and see why it's so important. So we are focused on people with rare disease and disabilities, but also their family members with opportunities, fun experiences, but also trying to foster community engagement and helping them see people with disabilities are valued society members. They should be on boards. They should be helping marketing firms when they're doing a commercial, or just trying to realize that people with disabilities are involved everywhere.
Mhm.
So get that visibility
Mhm.
in that.
Mhm.
You know? So that's a lot of it.
And so you did had your first fashion show. Now, is that something that you plan to do every year, or what kind of events are you planning?
So we've done two of them. We did our first one in 2022. We just did our second in 2023, and we just signed the contract to do one in 2024. That is going to be kind of our fundraiser event, and so
Mhm.
it's kind of a twofold where we're fundraising, but it's also an experience for the models to have fun, but then also the audience members to see what true representation looks like.
Looks like.
And so this year, in July, we did our first non, runway show. We did a billboard campaign around town for Disability Pride Month, and
Mhm.
we had 5 different ads that appeared throughout the whole month, uh, with all across town, and we had six. I believe we had 6 models on the ads, and so that was kind of exciting because that was our first non-runway
Mhm.
show, and we're
Mhm.
working on our second event that's going to happen in October. It's going to be an art exhibit, and it's going to be of individuals with physical disabilities, and it's called Refocus. And
Okay.
we're wanting to help um, society to realize, you don't judge a book by its cover. So, when you see someone in a wheelchair, there's more to them than the wheelchair, or if there's a limb difference, or if they have Down syndrome, there's more to them.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited about that. We partnered with another organization here. They're called Untitled 10, and they do a lot of pop up art shows. And so I reached out because I thought, with their experience of art shows and our experience, it'd be a great partnership. And they signed on, and they've been amazing. It's been fun to learn from them, and I think they've learned a lot from us. And
Mhm.
so it's been a really fun project because of the collaboration that's come
That's
into it.
awesome. That is awesome. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap up, or any advice that you would like to give?
The advice that I would like to give, I guess, is that for me, when I'm talking to young advocates or advocates in general, it's just realizing that, and many of all might know this, but just the aspect of when we understand our disability and when we own who we are, when we have those days that are tough, that's okay. But realizing as soon as we accept who we are, what our limitations are, but what our strengths are, I believe the better off we are as a person and how we could offer so much to society. And I wish society would also see that there's great value in having focus groups with individuals with disabilities. There's great value of hiring people with disabilities, because the bottom line is nobody understands everybody's journey. And that's okay. Like, you can't expect to understand a person's journey if you've never been in a wheelchair. And that's where hiring people, that's why having focus groups for anything, an event, a church committee, or anything is, they have a different perspective than you would. You have a different perspective than they would. And that the reality is, if the society can just all come together and all the different perspectives are actually going to be beneficial in moving society forward in inclusiveness. I mean, I got a message from a friend of mine last night. Her family went out to the Sturgis rallies, which is on the other side of our state in South Dakota. And then her parents went to a restaurant that had push buttons on the outside, which that nowadays isn't as uncommon. But she said they also had push buttons on the bathrooms inside.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's that it's like not taking the ADA as a checklist, but going above.
Yeah. I have, to this day, have never even seen one like that with a push button.
I've never seen it. I've been saying I have not seen a restaurant either that does that. Doors on the outside of the building,
yes, but not. Yeah.
So I mean, there is a perfect example that it's like, it is 2023 and our minds just got blown by push buttons at a restaurant on the bathroom doors. So I mean, that's kind of sad too. But but I mean, it's that we're realizing when we're building things, when we're planning events.
Geez, even I think of like Faith when we go and it's like, okay, here you wash your hands, but then you got to go all the way over there to get the paper towels or the thing. Okay, so you got your wheelchair, your walker, like how you get in there, Yeah, you just think there's so many things we think of that they just, I don't understand what the people are who are coming up with these and designing.
I think a lot of it is they're going off the ADA and they say it's a checklist, and it's like the ADA isn't even adequate because it's so old. 30 years is not that, 33 is not really that old. But I mean, when you think about it, it hasn't been updated. And so instead of doing the bare minimum, try to make it welcoming for anybody. That's the key.
Yeah.
It's just welcoming for anybody that would come in. Yeah.
And do you have siblings?
No, I do not.
You do not. Okay. I wasn't sure if you did.
Nope.
Okay. So what brings us to what's your word? So I hand stamp all of my guests as a token of appreciation from being on and sharing and being vulnerable. A hand stamp one letter at a time on a token word. So with that being said, would you be willing to share what word you chose and why?
So I'm choosing the word imagine. And that is because I wrote a poem in, I believe it was 2009, called Imagine. And it was all about imagine this, imagine that, where it's like, imagine you're 3 feet tall and in a wheelchair, but in a classroom filled with people that are much taller. Imagine you would like to go on a date, but you've never been on a date. It was imagine, it was that kind of a thing. And I wrote it, and a lot of, I just wrote it because I just wanted to. And it was seen by someone who was part of my pharmaceutical company that makes my medicine that I've been receiving weekly. I probably should have talked about that, but
we still can. I can always break this up into 2 episodes.
I was part of a clinical research enzyme trial for my condition. And so I lived out in Oakland, California for 6 months to get the Naglazyme, which it's called now, FDA approved. And so the company is called BioMarin Pharmaceuticals. And so at the beginning of it, when they were 100 people, they're, because they were small and now they're much bigger, they kind of did little like newsletters that they printed out. And I don't remember how, but I don't know if I posted it somewhere or something, but I had put my poems in there and they had said, hey, can we share this? And so they put it there in their little newsletter. And then I was getting pictures of people like in their office that had it posted because they said it was so powerful. Yeah. And so that was kind of my first poem that people really, I was very vulnerable in it. And I think that's why.
Now you have to send it to me so I can attach it to this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I was proud of it because, but that's why I'm choosing Imagine because, and then since then, like whenever my mom's shopping or when my grandma would be somewhere, if there was something that said Imagine, they pick it up. Yeah, so it's just, and it kind of goes back to the philosophy of how much I've like lived my life is that aspect of possibilities, staying positive. Imagine what might be possible.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been my other word that I live by too.
Yeah, I love that. What and then the very last thing is, how can people find you? Do you have like one website that has everything on it, like your books and your nonprofit, or are they like, how does one find you?
No, so rarebydesign.org has its own website. Mm-hmm. And then on there has like all our social media channels for Rare by Design. Okay. And then I have Kendra Gottsleben.com that has all my books on there. They are on Amazon too. And I have all my social media handles for my personal on my website too.
Okay, awesome. And I'll make sure that I put both of those in the show notes as well. Well, I just can't thank you enough so much. It was like so awesome to like just get to chill and hang out with you again and
good luck on editing.
So this is a great part of this. Basically there's nothing we need to edit because it's real life and we're having a conversation and sharing our stories. So I had the dog bark, but it wasn't enough for me to edit out. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be rude. I'm texting my husband, let the dog out, because the dog started whining at the door. And I'm like, I don't want to interrupt because you're like going so good and like telling good information. So I'm like, text him, let the dog out. I tell him, if the dog comes in, that's fine, but make sure just leave the door the way it is. Don't shut it behind her because then she's going to whine to get out. It's okay if you make noise. This is real life. It's okay.
Yeah, I think that's what's great is, it's always good to share what real people are saying and how it flows and everything. I thank you for asking me. It's been an honor and I enjoy it.
Welcome. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Thank you for joining us as we spread awareness through our personal stories and the many resources shared. You can help us by joining our village simply by sharing our show to the masses. If you would like to support the Guilbault Girls on another level, click on the link in the show notes to make a donation in any amount. Add your address and you'll receive a hand-stamped token with the word village on it in appreciation. Be sure to subscribe to our Guilbault Girls podcast and YouTube show, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Guilbault Girls. Till next time.